Yeah, I do.
No, I just.
Special meeting of the Oregon Water Resources Commission. We will be doing an executive session, very shortly, but first I want to go through and introduce all the commissioners, and I want to start online. And we'll go with Commissioner Wolf first.
My name is Woody Wolf. I'm the East Region Commissioner from Wallowa, Oregon.
And I'm Jan Lee. I represent the Northwest region and I'm in Sandy.
Kathy Kahira, East Side at Large, I'm based in Bend. And Julie Smitherman, I'm the Southwest region.
And Jan Newman, I'm the West Side at Large.
So we are just gonna keep moving forward. We're gonna go right into executive session, but I'm gonna read this really quickly. The Water Resources Commission will meet in executive session with counsel to consider confidential written legal advice from counsel as authorized by ORS 192.660 subsection 2 subsection F. Representatives of the news media and designated staff have been allowed to join the hybrid meeting to attend the executive session. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session. No decision may be made in executive session. So therefore, we will adjourn at this point and we'll reconvene about 2:30 for the public session.
I'll catch up with you later.
Right, welcome back. The meeting of the Water Resources Commission, we just adjourned from our executive session. And this is a meeting open to the open public, so that we can continue having discussions on some policy issues, some questions that we had that we weren't able to discuss during the executive session. So want to open it back up 2:30 until about 3 for any discussion, further discussion on policy related to the 512 rules. So I will start with my question. I don't see anybody else's hand raised just yet. So I wanted to go back and discuss the baseline that we're using for establishing water curtailment and water reduction in the basin. And from what I understand in the rules that we've discussed, a 2018 baseline. And so we're looking at water usage as of 2018 and then determining what needs to be reduced from that level of usage at that time. Is that correct?
So if I could jump in there, I'm happy to answer that. This is Tim Seymour. I'm assistant manager for groundwater section here at the department. And thank you for that question, Commissioner. Nowhere in the proposed rules do we specify the baseline of 2018 pumpage. In the rules, what we lay out is a process by which we'll establish what current usage is through the initial allotment process, and then we'll schedule a path of reductions to get down to the permissible total withdrawal, which, as defined in the rules, is the amount of pumping that our best available science and information tells us will achieve stable groundwater levels in the 30-year time period that we've laid out for management here. When we talk about the 2018 pumpage, that 2018 pumpage has been what we have used as a baseline for which to estimate what the quantity of reduction will be. So when we say our proposal is approximately a 35% basin-wide reduction, that is, what is 2018 pumpage levels as compared to the PTW values. But those 2018 pumpage values, to be very clear, are estimates, and they're the that comes from the model. And so we've used the model to establish that PTW and get to the, what we believe is the most scientifically defensible, permissible total withdrawal. And then we've compared that to 2018 to give people an understanding of what the curtailment looks like, in actual figures. But from a rule standpoint, when we go through this process and actually do the curtailment, the numbers could be wildly different depending on what the initial allotment process establishes as the baseline for pumping. So if in an area there's actually more pumping than what was estimated in 2018, then the curtailment percentage would be higher. If there's, in the inverse, less pumping within that area and the initial allotment is less than what was estimated in 2018, then the curtailment percentage would be smaller. But nowhere in the rules do we say, like, from 2018 pumpage, we're going to reduce down to this. We say we're going to establish the initial allotment, which is based on that process that we've talked about in past meetings, and then we're going to schedule reductions down to the PTW.
Thank you, Tim. That helps my question. I understand a lot better, and thank you for clarifying that is not what's currently in the rules. Just to be clear, so we're not confusing anyone who's listening. So, did you want to add anything to that?
Vice Chair Smithman, for the record, Jason Street, East Region Manager. No, I think Tim covered it well. I was just going to, say something much shorter and less eloquent than he did. Baseline of the model.
Because they did out.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think maybe Commissioner Wolf has a question pertaining to this.
Well, not, it's just a question. I felt that this was the right time to ask. What is the department's ability to explain the model by each increment within it? Once the optimization has happened, you run a scenario. Can you then re-break that scenario down into its simplest components on how the model got to the end result? Or is that exceedingly difficult?
Thanks for that question, Commissioner Wolf. I guess I'm going to take a stab at answering your question. You can tell me if it makes sense and answers it or not. So the numerical groundwater model is essentially a very complicated program that has essentially a lot of mathematical calculations that determine how water will move across the different cells within that model grid. And so when we use the optimization software, basically what we said is we want water levels to do this over this time period, and here is the parameters that have to exist within that. And then what it did is it tested over and over and over again by running the model over and over again different pumping scenarios, so decreasing pumping in different areas by different amounts to achieve that final goal. And when it found the maximum pumping that could occur in each of the areas and achieve the goal, that was the final solution. So there's no real way for us to say, like, well, I guess how to say this. It isn't possible for us to just pull all of that information out of the model and hand it to you and say, like, here's why water levels did what it did. They did what they did in the model because that's how the model was programmed. It's programmed to calculate those changes over time, or over time within the model space. So it's not like I can tell you, like, other than saying the model is built and calibrated to the system and it should be a good representation of that system. I can't, like, say each individual model run did this because of this specific reason without getting into some pretty serious math and digging into the model in depth.
Yeah, thank you for that. I just wanted that clarification. I think it can be immensely unsettling for some folks to get an answer and then have to just trust that it was derived in a manner that was put together correctly. So I just, thank you for that.
Yeah, one thing I'd add is that the model is publicly available and can be run by anybody that has the experience, to be able to run that model. And they can look at our PTW values, they can program them in and run our exact scenario and test whether or not what our results are accurate or not. So.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lee?
Yes, I had a couple questions about the model as well, Tim. One is there an error range that one looks at in the model? Is there some kind of a target of what that error range might be?
So I guess, thank you for that question, Commissioner Lee. I guess it depends on how what you're talking about when you talk about error range. So every model built has uncertainty within it. That uncertainty is going to stem from how much information we have and how well programmed that model is. Remember that uncertainty can also come from future events. So when we talk about the modeling, we are, and this is a nuance, we are not predicting the future. What we are doing is modeling possible outcomes. So we're simulating possible outcomes based on a set of assumptions. And one of those assumptions that's really key to final outcomes is recharge. And we have held recharge constant at average recharge from the 1980s to 2018-ish. And if recharge varies from the average, then the uncertainty of our model is much higher than it would be if recharge is average going forward. But there's no way for us to predict what recharge will be. So that I want to make it very clear that what we're doing is not predicting the future. What we are doing is simulating possible outcomes. And so there's uncertainty from the amount of information that has gone into the model. And that then, we would need to look at the uncertainty of each of the different pieces of information that go into it. So for instance, the geology, we don't have a comprehensive map of the basin that has every square inch of the basin and what the geology is. We have well log data, we have very good information, but we can't know everything. So there's uncertainty there. Water use data is programmed into the model. Again, we don't have comprehensive water use data from 1930 to 2018. We have good estimates, but again, it's not 100% accurate. We also don't have 100% accurate recharge data. So yes, there is uncertainty in the model. I can't give you a percentage. I can't say, we're plus or minus 5% or 10%, or whatever it would be. But there is uncertainty there, definitely.
So my second part of the question was, is the department in the process of truing up what the actual rights are now, not just paper rights, but delivery? One of the things that we heard was that there's double counting at some of the wells. There are water rights that need to be canceled, things like that. So is there a process that will go on that will try to true up that number so it fits better in the model?
So I'll speak directly to the model aspect of that question, and then I'll turn it over to Jason to talk about process related to cancellation and whatnot. So the model as it is designed and calibrated doesn't care about water rights. What it cares about is pumpage values, and that's based on our water use estimates and then applying those water use estimates to wells across the model grid space. And so regardless of what the water right is, what we looked at is how much water was being used and what are those estimates. As for truing up water rights, I'll turn it over to Jason to let him talk about that process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Sullivan, Commissioner Lee. With regard to cancellation of water rights that may be forfeit, we are working on that process right now. We have done some analysis of the basin to take a look at where it appears water rights may not be used or may be subject to forfeiture. And we plan on pursuing those rights in with regard to forfeiture in the future. We are gathering that information right now, and so that is part of the plan to address those rights in the future.
Thank you.
If I could just add a little bit to Tim's conversation about uncertainty of the model. I think it's important when we're framing the uncertainty of the model that we frame it around our adaptive management plan and the rules. That we have acknowledged that, you know, the model is not a predicting goal, it's a best, it's what might happen, it's not predicting. So we have built the first time in the state of Oregon, Oregon Water Resources Department, this adaptive management framework. So that if we are way off and we are ahead of where we expected, then we will right now turn off water rights and reduce reductions. And so that uncertainty will be played out in an adaptive management schedule, and we'll be adapting to what real data the groundwater levels are telling us on those different checkpoints.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Kelly. And I imagine that there is no model out there or ever will be out there that could 100% accurately predict the future. Right? So adaptive management makes sense in this case. Thank you. Derek, Dark, I'm sorry. Did you have anything to add as well?
And on the uncertainty front, there's an associated uncertainty with every aspect of the model. One important thing that the model does and does really fairly well is simulate water levels. That's primarily what we're looking at when we're talking about these adaptive management thresholds, the PTWs for stability, these kinds of things. The model report is calibrated to real measured water levels in wells. And the model report provides a treatment of how well the model does simulate real measured water levels at various points in time at different parts of the basin. And I don't have the exact numbers, but in general, what we find for that calibration is that in some parts of the basin, at some times water levels are simulated somewhat low, and in other parts of the basin, at other times, water levels are simulated somewhat high. But in general, the model does a very good job, given all the other uncertainties with recharge and pumpage estimates and everything else, of simulating those water levels. And it's important to recognize that uncertainty doesn't just go in one direction, right? So it's in some areas, in some cases, it simulates high, and in some areas, in some cases, it simulates low. And so really shooting for that central, so we're looking at medians, for example, really shooting for that central value can take into account the uncertainty on both sides, both the positive and the negative.
Thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner Newman.
I have a question about recharge. I think that Tim explained that the model holds recharge stable. And in the inputs are from whatever data you have from 1930 through 2018. So I'm wondering if you have any sense of, I mean, obviously adaptive management can come into play here too, but with climate change and changes in rainfall patterns and changes in precipitation generally and changes in evapotranspiration, do you have any sense of how comfortable you are with holding recharge steady? And do you think that will be accommodated in the adaptive management process, or is there something else that might come along that we'll need to do?
Yeah, Commissioner Newman, first a point of clarification for the future looking simulations, we're using the average of, I think it's 1984 to 2016 recharge. So kind of the later part of the record there, not that earlier part of the century. I'm not a climatologist. What we do see when we look at the regional climate models is that it's expected that more recharge will fall as rain instead of snow. How that directly impacts the recharge in the Harney Basin is much less clear. We do expect that the evaporative demand will be higher as temperatures become higher. And so that has the potential to reduce recharge as well. But again, I'm not a climatologist. In my view, from what I understand, we don't have a clear sense to say with any certainty what will be happening. And I do think that the adaptive management will be a good tool to deal with whatever does come with our uncertainty around recharge. If it's agreed that the goal, say, of stability at 30 years is the goal, the adaptive management, should help us to achieve that, with whatever recharge variation does come.
Vice Chair Smither and members of the commission, I was just gonna see if Tim or Darek knew that the overall precipitation across much of the basin down there, with the exception of the highlands, is relatively low. And the percentage of that actually serves as recharge, I think is also relatively low. So most of the recharge occurs over a smaller footprint of the basin.
That's right. I'll go ahead and expand if I could. I believe the average recharge in the lowland parts of the basin, so down in Harney Valley, averages about 10 inches a year. And the findings from the water budget report, so that's the Garcia et al. 2022 paper, basically finds that the direct infiltration and recharge from that lowland precipitation is negligible. It really does not play a major role in the recharge component to the aquifer system. It's that surface water coming down from the uplands and coming across those stream floodplains. So that's the primary source of recharge there.
How have you discussed, and I know you have talked about this a lot, but metering individual wells? And is that something that's going to be taken into account with adaptive management?
Vice Chair Smitherman, thanks for that question. So incorporated into the rules is a serious water management problem area, which requires everyone in the critical area and actually the whole classification area to meter their wells if they're being used. That is taken into account. We expect metering reporting from every non-exempt well in that.
Okay. So looking at total usage in the basin right now, it's based on, well, try to say this. I know the model doesn't look at water rights, right? So we're not concerned with that, but if I keep hearing this conversation about paper water rights versus actual water rights, I'm trying to wrap my mind around it a little bit. Were the paper water rights used for how much water is being used in the basin in the model? No. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Vice Chair Smitherman, Dark Boschman, hydrogeologist. The water use estimates for the groundwater study that were then implemented into the model were published in a department open file report, Beamer and Hoskinson. I believe the year was 2020 or so. And these are water use estimates that are based off of the remote sensing data. So at that time, we were using the metric model and the satellite imagery archive to establish the pumpage estimates. Their report, and I'm not an author on that report, but their report did use a select subset of flow meter records from the basin, so actual metered water use from wells, to establish and help better correlate and associate the ET records from the remote sensed data to actual water use data. So it's primarily the remote sense data, but it is corrected to a basin specific subset of the flow meter records as well.
So the usage there should be it should match more of what's actually happening versus what's on paper.
That's right. They weren't looking at all at what the authorized use was. They were trying to get at the actual applied water.
That's helpful, thank you. And Dr. Gong?
Vice Chair Smither and members of the commission, I think one of the concerns from some of the groundwater users in the community is that we would allot or allocate water through the contested case process based on paper water rights. And that would not honor folks who have actually invested and developed and have been using their water, where older water rights or junior water rights regardless never developed that. And so that's what the allotment portion that you've heard discussion of and is in the rules is really about, is to establish the starting place for the contested case process, not based on the paper water.
Not based on paper water and further metering is only going to help with that accuracy.
this is a tiny question, but, do you have a sense of how many water rights in the basin currently require measurement and reporting? I know that that's been in a lot of permits since the nineties, and I assume that that incorporates a fair number of them in this basin, although there looks like there were a lot in the eighties. I'm just curious, and I guess follow up to that is, since the rules, whatever we do, the rules are not gonna be in place for a while. With measurement reporting requirements, is the department also kind of focusing on those now and trying to get everyone up to compliance on measurement reporting?
That's an excellent question, Commissioner Newman. We have found about 1,400 wells in the basin total. Of those, there are about 300 that do not have a measuring device requirement. And of course, there are likely a number of the remaining 1,100 that do not have measuring devices that we could pursue under their current permit conditions, or they may not be functioning, but they do have the requirement of having the measuring device already. We have gotten significant amount of participation in our cost share program over the last couple of years in the basin for replacing or installing measuring devices. So it's been a pretty significant push down there to get things installed. We are reminding folks regularly that that is coming and going to happen. What we're focusing on now is making sure that we can accept that data and be able to process it and get information from it. So that when they do submit it, that there's actually a reason, behind that, and we can actually use that data to determine actual use.
So with that 300 that don't have the measuring requirement, they will. And is the cost share program then open to them to participate in at that point? I would
Yes,
assume, yeah.
generally it has been historically, as funding may be reduced in the future, it may be less because, in previous years before we had significant funding in that program, we, may not allow, cost share for those that are required. But the last few years, since we've had a significant amount of money available in that program, we have allowed anybody that would like to participate.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments or thoughts or anecdotes? Commissioner Mall?
Yeah, not a question, but a comment. I think most of you know I'm in Japan right now doing some work related to grizzly bear management, brown bear management over here, and I'll just say that maybe you've all seen it. It's in a lot of the U.S. press as well, but there's been a tremendous uptick in the last few years here of not only brown bears but Asiatic black bear attacks on people and a few deaths and things. So there's a huge media blow up. And when I was doing this work 30 plus years ago, there were a lot of trend data showing that bears were declining. And so models were built, and based on some of those models, they made some changes to policy. And there are so many factors, but clearly bear numbers have increased some, populations have expanded some. But then you have wild card events like horrible weather leading to complete failure of bear foods and things. And so it's really hard to tease that out. What's important though is in the meantime, similar to what I think staff are rightly proposing here, an adaptive management approach, they've been able to develop systems and make adjustments and those sorts of things. So I would just want to caution everybody who I don't think most of us have had much experience working with models, but when you do experience that, you're getting different scenarios, but the reality is what you have to deal with, that we're in a position now of coming up with policies that really encourage that dealing with the reality. And I think it all starts with the collective community recognition that the reality is we have a problem and we need to act on it, and that waiting for a different model is not the way to do that, but to take the best science that we have, which I do think we have in hand, and to make the difficult policy decisions and practical applications that are before us. So I feel really good and want to thank staff again for all that they continue to put into this, and thank the community as well for continuing to engage in what's going to be a difficult implementation. But it's time for us, I think, to make those decisions and move forward in good faith, and I look forward to doing that.
But I'm also interested in hearing more about other critical groundwater areas in Oregon and how rules have been applied, in particular the municipalities, and how they've worked through that. So I know that we were kind of chatting about getting some more information regarding those other areas, and so I think that will be helpful in our final decision as well. I think one of my questions would be, as it relates to a municipality, and we talked about exempt uses of water, domestic uses of water, anything has been done with municipalities to just focus on the outdoor uses of water or summertime uses of water, and restrictions on that. And again, I wouldn't know where to exactly start on that. I have ideas, but I don't know if that's ever been discussed with the department, if any of those rules have ever been implemented in other basins. And I don't know if you have enough background right now to speak on that, or we'll just wait to hear and we don't have. Okay, thank you.
Well, yeah, Vice Chair Smither and
Yeah.
members of the commission, we have not specifically imposed specific reductions or control measures on municipal uses within critical areas. Like you can't water outdoors.
Yeah,
Haven't done anything like that.
that would
We've-
be something that they would design maybe in their WMCP to meet the reduction requirement.
Yeah.
I assume the communities out there do have WMCPs, the municipalities.
Vice Chair Smitherman, if I may.
Yes.
Just kind of setting the stage for next steps. Staff continue to work on preparing a staff report. They'll be finalizing that, incorporating whatever changes we feel are appropriate into the proposed rules that you'll see. And they'll be sending that information out to you sometime in hopefully the first couple of weeks of November there. It's going to be a fair amount of material. So I encourage you all to do everything you can to digest that. And as you have specific questions that come up, feel free to reach out to me and I'll try and address that. But I think at this point in time, I just want to ask if anybody has any significant level of discomfort with moving forward with the rules as you first saw that draft there, or any of the discussions that we've had since.
I think I'm just curious if and how any of the petition comments are going to be incorporated into the final rules.
I'm similar, I think, to what Chair Smitherman said as well, that I feel like there is room for incorporation of some of the perspectives in the existing draft rules.
Commissioner Mall?
I would just add that in addition to appreciating all that staff has done with preparing the model and the rules and everything that's been going on in the last many years, even though it's a lot of material to get to, I do appreciate the detailed summaries and response to the comments.
Commissioner Lee?
Yes, I'm looking forward to the comments. I would like to see some of the values in the petition move forward, and I think we'll see some of that when we get the documents.
Thank you, Commissioner Lee. Anyone else?
I have one comment on just, it's an amazing amount of work, an amazing amount of detail and dedication. Okay, let's try to get it right this time and not dig the hole deeper. Because, first thing on trying to dig yourself out, to get out of the hole is to stop digging the hole. Engineer brain says, bingo. So it's hard, I think when we were doing the groundwater rules, first time that on statewide, yes, it was scary because we were changing our focus and our outlook from like, well, we don't know that the answer that we have water or not, so the answer, default answer is yes. To go for, well, if we don't know we have enough water, the default answer is no. That was a big shift. And this is the first critical groundwater that's coming after that. And we have a chance now to really think about it and do it right, carefully, and make the changes so that, yes, Kearney Basin can continue to prosper, but not just the farmers, but the groundwater system, dependent system, the springs can still work. All of that is part of that whole environment, makes that place special, and continue to work and not be, that we can all live, that the humans, the natural environment can all work together to be a nice place to be, and not, oh, well, our focus is all on, let's make more money, these guys make more money from alfalfa, let's prioritize that. No, we have to make it, it's on us to be focused on a much wider basis. So I commend the work that all of the staff is doing, what all of the community is doing, and even what all we are doing and trying to wrestle this question and policy. So that's what you said.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Kara. Well, just want to thank everyone for staying, for allowing us to ask more questions. Again, we, like Kathy was saying, we don't take it lightly. We know that there's been a lot of work gone into this, and we look forward to the staff report in November. Yeah, I really, that's gonna be a lot, but it's important for all of us. I know we all agree that this is important, and we owe it to that community to do our homework and really dive into the information that we provide. So again, I appreciate everybody for being here. I think with that, we will adjourn today's special Water Resources Commission meeting, and we will see everyone in December.